The Robotaxi rollout has a lot of moving pieces, especially for a car that has so few moving parts. It's amazing how they managed to make it work like that. Well, we are back with part 2 of a discussion with Phil, who is a wealth of knowledge and a lot of fun to chat with. We are talking about the ins and outs of Robotaxi and where it goes next. This is all based on an article he posted on X, and we've got a link to that in the description if you want to check it out. Probably also a link to part 1. I hope we'll find out about that too. I'm Brian. Welcome to Future Ozza. Okay, so Phil, we were discussing we left off with safety, and kind of tied to safety is we got go slow to go fast.
Yep.
What?
Yeah, I mean it's exactly what you do if you want to go fast. It sounds completely strange, but yeah, you start off very slow and measured because what you are looking to do is avoid any backtracking.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have, one, two, 300 issues and you nail them in the go slow phase, um, then it's a lot easier to manage than
Mm-hmm.
if you've got a couple thousand vehicles in multiple cities and you have to deal with some problem, which will happen,
Yeah.
But this I think is the secret sauce to, it's sort of the hare and the turtle kind of race, and um, they're looking like the turtle right now, but they will win the race demonstrably because of, I think, this measured approach.
It's the measure twice, cut once, or was it measure once, cuss twice approach? I think you've got to. Yeah, if I say the two of you can have a race, it's 100 miles, and one of you takes off on foot, and the other says, "Well, I got this broken bicycle here. Maybe I can fix it," and it takes you a day, 2 days to fix it. Maybe the guy on foot will still win. But once you get to the 100-mile mark and they say, by the way, the race continues for another infinity, well, the
Yeah,
bicycle wins from there out forever.
yeah,
So I think that's the approach that you're talking about here.
yeah. I mean, it's. I think it is, as we discussed earlier, is what I expected. I expected to be, very measured, very confined space, geofence space, a limited number of cars, a limited number of riders, experienced riders, meaning people that have experience, own Teslas, understand
Right.
FSD, um,
Sure.
and
Well,
I think,
understand how to open the door for a
yeah,
starter.
yeah, you don't need to encounter the very naive parts of the customer experience right up front.
Right.
Especially this, the testing they're doing right now is really about making sure the rides are safe and effective, the drop offs are clean, and then they'll start to hone in on and deal with the longer tail of the experience
Yeah.
after this.
Yep. And then you've got this is how you build something that lasts by solving for safety, scalability, and customer experience early. This is exactly what you're discussing.
Yeah.
Um, And I think it's entirely possible that Waymo tried to scale too soon, which is why it took them so long to move past Phoenix and San Francisco. But
Yeah, there's a couple things they did that were very similar, and perhaps Tesla learned. I mean, I believe they had these safety observers in the car in the beginning. I
they
remember
had saved,
seeing,
they were behind the wheel.
yeah, yes, and I remember seeing that in San Francisco. But I don't think at that time the cars were in service for customers. I don't really remember how that worked out. But here we have these observers that are, of course, not in the driver's seat.
Hmm.
So we know, and we discussed earlier, that the car is actually doing what you see it doing.
Yes.
So
Okay. So now we got version wars.
yeah,
Talk,
so
talk,
I think
talk.
this is a fun little discussion about all the things that are happening here. I mean, as customers, if we've caught up, we're at FSD 13.29, I believe. That's
I
the
believe.
latest, greatest. I think that's being put on production cars today, and certainly my car has it. I'm sure yours does. And that, of course, is the supervised version. And I would call it the customer release as opposed to what we're going to talk about, which is the commercial release. Um, so what I predicted was that the first version of FSD on these robotaxis would be version 14, and it would be a
Mhm.
larger model. Um, And it seems that that's not true. It seems that this version is sort of a maturation or a branch off of 13.2.9 called 13.3. People have called it 13.3. I'm not sure that's been confirmed, but the number really doesn't matter. What we have now is two kind of branches floating around. We have a supervised customer version and we have an unsupervised commercial version. And I think that the commercial version is being used not only for um, Robotaxi, but it's also been used in the pretty awesome what I'll call first full self delivery event that occurred, which is largely the same thing, right? It's the car is making its way to a destination, pulling over at the destination without a driver, in this case without an observer, because clearly the observer is not needed in the first place. So where I see this going is that I think, Elon has confirmed, and they've talked about it, that they are definitely working on a larger model, uh, 4x more parameters. And by the way, that doesn't characterize the data, the training data, which I think would be demonstrably larger as well, right? So not only are you building a model with more parameters, um, but you're also potentially using a lot more data to hone those parameters to their values.
Hmm.
And and I think if I would hazard a guess that the commercial and the customer versions will merge into one master version and probably be moded, meaning that you're for a long time after this. I think we, because of regulatory reasons, supervised will be the way it will work for the end customer because we don't have the right to have our cars drive themselves around in at least most places. But of course, I don't. What I don't think is that Tesla wants to necessarily maintain two separate things. So I think they will simply put it in a mode, and it will either run in supervised or unsupervised commercial mode.
Hmm.
And but I also think that the reason I named it Version Wars is I think it will remain still. While they'll simplify on their end, I think we'll start to see a large number of version numbers floating around in the space, because what's going to happen is they're going to be entering this business and starting to scale it, and they're going to be rapidly fixing problems and releasing them onto vehicles. And I think that what we'll see is on our vehicles, customer owned vehicles, those releases will still be fairly slow. We won't have. I don't think we're going to get a higher velocity set, um, because I think their focus is going to be mostly on the Robotaxi releases. I mean, we don't know today. I might say that within the less than 2 weeks they've been operating this service. What has it been? 2 weeks now. They,
Yes, by the time this comes out, it'll be about 2 weeks.
yeah, they may have already rolled 5 OTAs on the fleet,
Oh, sure. Hmm.
and fixed fine tuned some FST problems, fixed some user interface issues. Remember,
Hmm.
the software is larger than FSD. The software controls the entire experience as well. So
Right.
I think that's very likely to have happened or will happen. Certainly will happen.
Yeah. Well, we just watched the whole video of the delivery. That was pretty cool.
It was pretty
Um,
cool, actually.
it
I mean,
really was. I'd like to say they listened to my advice on how to do the delivery for media's sake, but it was a pretty obvious suggestion. I'm sure they just had the same idea. So yeah, the version numbers is not the big thing. The version number, I mean, really it doesn't matter. Bigger number, good, fine. And yes, this week I've gotten one update on one car, but not the other. They're both on hardware 4. Very strange, just minor fixes. All right. Going vertical. What's going on here?
well, I think I mean, the best companies are vertically integrated. They
Hmm.
control their entire stack. Tesla, of course, controls the entire stack. They build the car. They build the inference hardware. They build they build all the electronic hardware in the car, most of the ECUs, obviously not door controllers and silly things like that they source from suppliers, as they should, but all the main function stuff is built in house. They pretty much designed the inference chip from silicon up. They they've done the FSD software. They've done the user interface software. I mean, they control the entire stack,
Hmm.
and I think this gives them enormous advantage. I mean, we know that just by looks alone, the Tesla. I mean, what do we have here? We have Model Ys that are literally production cars, and the only difference that we see on a Robotaxi is a sticker that they placed on the side that says Robotaxi.
Someone noticed a little black box in the back.
You mean like
Maybe,
a electronics box?
maybe, yes, like a
Yeah,
little electronics box, maybe, I don't know, large sandwich size.
yeah, I don't
Um,
know.
and it could be my theory is that's an additional comms link. So if they're in somehow don't have cell coverage, they still have sufficient data connection just in case. But that goes back to your point about being an abundance of caution, which I think.
Also that even if there is such a thing, I didn't see that myself, but even if there is such a thing, uh, this is the whole point. By being vertically integrated, they can very
Mhm,
quickly integrate some other device in the car. They don't have to call the manufacturer. They don't have to
mhm.
work with them. The manufacturer then calls the suppliers. They have this long.
3 months pass before they give you the
Yeah,
first wave of answer, which is not in any way useful.
yeah. It's really tough. I mean, I did this. Because I was at Rivian, I saw this firsthand working with. I mean, Rivian philosophically is similar to Tesla to be as vertically integrated as possible,
Hmm.
but you don't you don't do certain parts of your even vehicle electronics. You don't do, like, for example, the door controllers or something like that, and every single one of those little things that you don't do ends up being a problem.
Hmm.
Now, now, it wouldn't make sense to do them, but then sometimes you look back and you say to yourself, "Why didn't we do it? Jesus, if we had just done that ourselves, we could have saved so much time." The other point I make in this
Oh, real
section is,
quick, I just wanted to say the answer to that is because you don't know until it's too late which one little part you needed to do, and
yeah,
at the time, the only alternative is to do all the parts yourself, and you can't do that.
yeah, you can't do that because if you try, but the problem sometimes working with, like, I'll give you a funny little example. Imagine that you do have a door controller. What does it do? It simply takes a command to lock and unlock the door. I mean, for the most part, and it may cinch the door. There may be some other elements to it, but that component you want to include in your entire package while it's a smaller ECU, smaller electronics control unit, like very teeny. You want to be able to update its software. So
Mhm,
you want to run it when you run your OTA, over the air update on the car. You're running something that hopefully in the car is what we call transactional, meaning that either the whole thing updates or only pieces. If only parts of it update, things get out of sync.
right.
So, however, if you have a door controller that has a very non-modern, let's call it old way of like updating it, you end up with a bunch of problems because typically the customers have never done that before. The customers never made that demand. So you go back to the
Mhm,
supplier, and the supplier's like, "Oh yeah, we have a spec for that, but we actually have never even tested it ourselves."
mm.
Eh, yeah, because all we ever did was load the software once, and no one ever updated in the vehicle. So, it's tricky when you don't do it yourself, but that characterizes all of legacy auto. That
Mhm,
they're really assembling parts from supply chain. Um, Tesla's very vertically integrated, and so therefore it has these ability to do these things. A good example I would point out is sort of example would be if you compare it directly in this business. So if you talk about how do you have experience on Waymo, right? So in Waymo we have all these appendages on the car because you can't necessarily, you're not in the design studio integrating the lidars in some clever, hidden, beautifully designed way, that it looks very bolted on. But you also have effects that come in the software because, like, for example, Tesla has end-to-end control. So one of the things that people don't recognize is that, and Elon has talked about this, but a lot of people don't double click on this very much, is that the photon to control latency.
Right.
And so what Tesla's trying to do is they're trying to say, when we get the data in that's going to run through the inference to make the decisions on how to um, actuate the controls, whether it's steering angle, brake, accelerator, we want to have the least amount of time between the moment we get the data and operate on that data.
Hmm.
And uh, when you're working like with Waymo, you don't really necessarily you don't control that. You don't control that end to end. So you can't even talk to the engineer if you run into a problem and you're not, like, for example, if you're trying to control the steering angle at a certain frequency and you're not getting through to the controller, and you're trying who are you talking to? So you're going to go
Right.
talk to the manufacturer. Oh, sure. The manufacturer will then talk to the supplier, and you won't get product excellence, and you certainly won't get velocity.
Right. Right. Now I will now you said you described Waymo as being bolted on, but I'm going to show you a picture here and I challenge you to tell me if this is a Jaguar I-Pace or a Waymo Jaguar I-Pace because I don't know. Can you spot the difference? Oh, there. Wait, if you look very closely, you might see a little bit of lidar there, all over it, everywhere. And a question I would have for you on that is, do you think they crash tested these, pedestrian safety tested these? Because I don't think they did.
It's hard to know. I mean, there's, as you know, there's a lot that goes into bringing a vehicle from design to production to just to the street, and you do want to run it through lots of different testing. I mean, whether it's crash testing, you're running it through wind tunnels for efficiency. I mean, you can imagine, you take these cars like a Tesla, like Cybercab is, you're trying to eke out, if you will, 5.5 kilometer miles to the kilowatt hour,
Hmm.
right? Imagine, and by the way, that involves all sorts of little tricks in terms of airflow, and you can imagine, right? There's a lot of little things that affect that. It's not just the weight, and
No.
weight's an issue, but and weight can be mitigated by lots of things. Like, for example, Cybercab, for lots of reasons, might have two doors and not four.
Hmm.
um, and one of them might be parts and cost, and the other might be just weight. It may have a smaller battery because it's trying to reduce weight, because there's a sweet spot. But on top of that, there's going to be a whole thing about the airflow of the car for that efficiency. So if you're trying to, if you have the advantage of vertical integration and you do the entire design of your entire sensor suite, whether it's LiDAR or not, irrelevant. It's just what you decide that you need, and you integrate it properly into the car, and it goes through that whole testing process. Then, you don't drop maybe a half a mile per kilowatt hour,
Hmm.
which is going to end up as a piece of your cost structure, your operating
Right.
cost structure, right? So,
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you recall, but I did have the chance to interview five of the engineers who designed and built the Cybercab.
mm,
I was free to ask them anything, and believe me, I did. I used up my time thoroughly, and I got a whole lot of answers. Uh, I did ask them point blank. I said 5.5. Come on, that's too low. You're
yeah,
sandbagging, right?
yeah,
I got a buddy who gets 4 miles to the kilowatt in a Model 3. And they said 5.5 is what we're allowed to say because the size of the car, the drag coefficient of such a small profile, the fact that it's never going to be stomping on the accelerator,
right.
uh, all the pieces come together. Most of its life will be operated at low speed where drag
Mostly,
isn't as big of an
yeah,
issue anyway.
city driving
So
works to the advantage of
really
electric cars.
helps.
Yeah.
Really helps. Guys, the article goes on a little bit longer, but Phil has covered most of the bullet points already. So we're going to wrap it right there. What did we miss? What did we misunderstand? Leave it. I will, if there's enough questions, I'll try and get Phil back to answer them. But I really appreciate this look under the proverbial hood. We didn't look under the hood, but we got a good idea of what to expect next and what they're probably thinking behind the scenes and some of the advantages. And I would agree with you, Phil, that the cost disadvantage of the I-Pace over the Cybercab is such that even if the uh, Waymo was free, it would cost more in the long run and it would die so much sooner. The I-Pace is not a terribly reliable vehicle to begin with before you make all these modifications, which can only reduce the reliability. So I don't know. We may reach a point where if Tesla can reduce their teleoperators to Waymo's level, let alone below Waymo's level, it's game over. So, guys, let us know what you think. Everybody, do me a favor, head down to the description. You can find a link to Phil's account on X, where he posts brilliant stuff like this all the time. And everybody else, like, subscribe, hit buttons, just start smacking buttons, see what happens. And if you hated the video, press Alt F4 now and maybe go outside. And stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you, clever robots, when I trick Phil into coming back for more.